We had a little friendly wager with the governor of Missouri about the Super Bowl in February of 2021, which was played right across the bay, and I put my money on the Tampa Bay Bucks, and you know what? We were able to do it. Look, if they had beat the Rams, I think they would have beat the 49ers and the Bengals and won it again. But you know what? We get a chance. We get one more chance with Brady coming back. So hopefully we'll be able to get it done. For today's announcement, I have a great cast of characters with us. We have our Secretary for the Department of Environmental Protection, Sean Hamilton, Chairman of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, Rodney Barreto, the Executive Director of FWC, Eric Sutton. We have Visit Florida, President and CEO Dana Young, the Chief Science Officer of the state of Florida, Dr. Mark Rains, President and CEO of Mobe Marine Laboratory, Dr. Michael Crosby. I did not see him. Where are you at? He's not here yet? Is he coming or no? Yeah, he's on his way? Okay. Director of Fish and Wildlife Research Institute, Gil McCrae, FWC Research Scientist, Dr. Kate Hubbard, new Commissioner for FWC, Al Murray, and then we've got Senator Ed Hooper, and then I saw Representatives Latvala, DeSigli, and Cheney, and we have the Speaker of the House, Chris Sprouse, as well. So thank you. We're here today to, is he, there he is. Okay, hey, how you doing, man? Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. We're here today to announce some new funding that I've approved in this next year's budget. Now, I've not signed the whole budget yet because we're still going through those. I've got line item veto authority. We got to make sure we get it right. But we have done more than any governor to help put resources to bear for research and mitigation efforts against red tide. And if you look at the 4 years before I became governor, those 4 years, there was a total of $2.5 million that was allocated to address the research and mitigation of red tide. Once I make this announcement today, for my 4 years, we went from $2.5 million to $40 million for these efforts. So we're excited about it. We understand that, yes, these red tide blooms have been recorded for hundreds of years. We understand they happen, but we also believe that we need to do whatever we can to mitigate the effects. You know, you see if there's one little bloom somewhere, like off the coast of Sarasota, you know, the media will act like it's in every part of Florida. So it does affect people who work in tourism and hospitality, the restaurants, because sometimes people think that somehow this is going. So we really want to put resources to bear, both for research and mitigation. And so today, for next year's budget, we're going to have the most we've ever had. We're going to have $14 million to enhance the state's effort to better understand, detect, and mitigate red tide and its impacts on Florida communities. So that's really, really significant. So this includes $4.8 million for the Center for Red Tide Research at FWRI, which was created at my request in 2019 to improve statewide red tide monitoring and to conduct research to better track, predict, and mitigate the effects of red tide. It also includes $3 million for the Florida Red Tide Mitigation and Technology Development Initiative, which is a partnership between FWC and Mobe Marine Laboratory, and we'll hear from Dr. Crosby here in a minute, to identify technologies to decrease the economic and environmental impacts of red tide. This initiative was established in 2019 in a bill I signed, and we have dedicated $3 million every year, and we're going to continue to do that for a total of 6 years. And this is important, and we'll let Dr. Crosby talk about it. You know, they are doing a lot of research in the laboratory, and they have a lot of things that potentially could be very effective. Now, you need to make sure if you're going to deploy that in the actual environment that it's not causing other problems, and so they're looking through all of these things, but I think he'll say, you know, they're very confident that if we keep up on this, we're going to have better mitigation applications than we've ever thought was possible. So we're going to continue to do that. We also have $20 million available to combat harmful algal blooms and to support county governments in cleanup efforts, with a minimum of $5 million dedicated to the Red Tide Emergency Grant Program. And so what happens is, you know, if you have a bloom, you end up seeing these fish And then if you don't go out and clean it out, then it just exacerbates all the problems. And so what we did last summer when you had it in Tampa Bay is they sent millions of dollars in grants to the counties. You had FWC DEP out there, trying to do the quick cleanup to be able to allow the recovery to happen. And so we're happy that we're able to do that. We have had a dedicated funding source to respond to harmful algal blooms since I became governor in 2019, and this $20 million is actually double the funding than we had in the current year budget. And we did more in this current year. This is doubling that, and it's not just for red tide in the Gulf Coast. We're also doing things to mitigate blue-green algae in Lake Okeechobee. Because what ends up happening is you have blue-green algae that will develop. Part of that is for runoff from other areas that are involved. A lot of it agriculture, other things. Which Lake Okeechobee is what it is. But if the lake gets too high, the Army Corps of Engineers will actually discharge that water into the estuaries. And so if you discharge that into the Caloosahatchee River, it ends up going out into the Gulf of Mexico in southwest Florida. If you then have red tide, it interacts with that and it exacerbates it. And so we've worked with the Army Corps to limit discharges. Our view is you should manage the lake so that it's lower level going into the rainy season. You're going to get rain. Not going to get so high that you're going to have to spew this into the St. Lucie and the Caloosahatchee. And you know what? You look at 2019, when I got elected governor, before I even took office, I went to meet with President Trump, and I said, Mr. President, we've got an issue with Lake Okeechobee. And he's like, well, why don't you I was like, the Army Corps is doing it. We're not doing it. And he's like, all right. So I asked him, can you just please tell them, they have managed it better. We've had less discharges 2019, 2021 over the rainy season than we had in the previous. You go back to 2016, see what happened on the East Coast in Stewart, 2018 in places like Southwest Florida. So this is something that we're very, and we're also building more infrastructure. We're building a reservoir on both the east and the western parts of Lake Okeechobee that's going to be able to take this, clean this water so that we make sure that we're not mitigating. But before that infrastructure is finished, and it's going to be finished, by during my time as governor. But the technologies where you can actually send people in there who can now treat the blue-green algae. When we had some of this build up last summer, we actually had companies out there that were going and mitigating. And so that's where this funding can be applied to. And so that makes a big difference. So we're really happy. So since 2019, we've done $40 million to address red tide. It's been historic. In the 4 fiscal years prior to me becoming governor, to go from $2.5 million to $40 million, that's a huge commitment. We're happy to do that. And we've been able to, through our executive order, we're the #1 fishing destination in the country, so we've got to make sure that we're continuing to do all we can. And by the way, did you see we did the longest red snapper season that we've ever done? We announced that a couple weeks ago. All these fishermen, they're really, really excited. And we're happy to do that, and we want to continue to do that. And so, when I did the executive order upon taking office, we said we're going to reorganize the Red Tide Task Force because that had been defunct for the previous 15 years. We're going to make this something that's going to be a priority. And if you look at what they've been able to do since I became governor, they've done sampling for red tide increase over 68% compared to prior to me becoming governor. And we have 60 different statewide partners that help in this effort. They will do offshore because that's where red tide originates. Those have doubled over the last 3.5 years. We currently have 25 projects underway at the Red Tide Mitigation and Technology Development Initiative at Mobe Marine. And so we were able, when did we go? Last summer when we went out there with you all? They got a place, it's in, Sarasota, Bradenton area. And, they're working on all this stuff. And he's going to talk about some of it. But just imagine, if we end up with the type of approach that is going to mitigate this, that's going to be worth so much to this state to be able to do that. So we're happy about that. We're glad that they have a lot of these research projects underway, and we're happy to be able to partner with them to be able to do that. So we're going to continue doing this. We're working with Mobe Marine, working with our state universities, of course, working with the relevant state agencies to make sure that we're doing all we can to put our money where our mouth is and to make sure that we are researching and hopefully developing ways to mitigate red tide as well as other harmful algal blooms. So we're going to hear from some folks up here. So first, let me bring up Rodney Barreto, who's the chairman of the FWC.
Thank you, Governor. I got to tell you, fish and wildlife is tied to tourism, and make no doubt about it. So the governor, not only has he done more for red tide than any other governor in the history of Florida, he's done more for the environment than any other governor in Florida. I think he deserves a great round of applause. I talked to the governor. I told the governor FWC is committed. We have boots on the ground. We're going to apply the best practices of science. In fact, Kate Hubbard, who is our lead science, she's in here. She's in the room here. She just became the FWC Employee of the Year. We just gave her a beautiful award yesterday at our meeting in Gainesville. But I got to tell you, we're committed to helping resolve this issue. We know that the fish kill affects all Florida because people think it's all Florida, and it's not. So we're with you. We're in the fight, and thank you, Governor, for all the resources.
All right, thank you. Okay, Dr. Michael Crosby from Mobe Marine.
Well, thank you very much, Governor, for bringing us all together today, for keeping us on task, and for your outstanding environmental leadership with a continued focus on what we can do to mitigate the impacts of harmful algal blooms. The governor's leadership, along with that of the legislature, has enabled the state, as the governor has said, to launch this incredibly unique new red tide mitigation technology development initiative. It's a wonderful partnership between the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute and Mobe Marine Laboratory. And this initiative is bringing together the best and brightest minds in science, not only from the state of Florida, but from all around the world. We're utilizing innovative approaches and technologies to determine the most effective, but very importantly, ecologically compatible methods for mitigating the adverse effects of red tide. It also is enhancing public health protection with the expansion of the beach condition reporting system. You can go to visitbeach.org. One of the sites is right here on this beach, so folks from restaurants, hotels, local residents, tourists from around the world can dial up and find out which beaches are open, what the beach conditions are, so they can continue to come here. We're developing smartphone apps to engage citizens as well as commercial fishermen in reporting where red tide is, and most importantly, we're leveraging the state's investment in this initiative with Mote's ability to go out and secure private funding and federal funding, and I'm hoping we're going to have an announcement on that one here in a couple weeks as well. But I know the question everybody has, including the governor, is where are we? What's the status here? So we've reviewed over 100 different research proposals. As the governor said, 25 different ongoing projects. We have 20 new partners working with us, Florida universities, non-Florida entities, and nonprofit organizations. The initiative has created a cutting-edge red tide mitigation testing facility that has over 150,000 gallons of treated and recirculating seawater so that we can test these strategies and these approaches before ever applying them out into the natural environment. From the hundreds of mitigation tools and technologies that we have examined to date, the initiative has already identified well over a dozen different natural compounds, man-made compounds, and new technologies that demonstrate great promise of reducing red tide cells and, very importantly, the toxin as well, denaturing the toxin without causing any greater harm to the natural environment. These include 6 algacidal compounds from natural macroalgae, an ozonation, cavitation, and oxidation water treatment process, controlled release of oxidant pellets, clay particulates, polymer-coated iron oxide nanoparticles, UVC light radiation from LEDs, quaternary ammonium compounds. Brewers spent grain actually is one of the sources of these compounds, so breweries are helping out in this as well. Metal phenolic networks combined with polyaluminum chloride and an algicide and 2 different amino acids. Algicidal effects on algal mitigating bacteria. We've also completed the early steps of a little biosensor to aid shellfishermen and the farmers out there in their decision making when a red tide does come in for when they can harvest safely those shellfish and not lose that entire crop. We've also completely redeveloped and expanded the beach condition reporting system at visitbeaches.org, and we've made it much more user-friendly so everyone out here can actually pull up their little iPhones and their smartphones and look for the conditions of beaches all around the state of Florida. Other states are starting to use this as well, but it's very important for places like this, for restaurants, for hotels, for our resident population and for visitors, so they know where the great beaches are, where they can still come even during a red tide event. But critically important now, we're transitioning to the more promising technology, and we're beginning to investigate the engineering scaling on how we're going to be able to deploy these technologies out in the field. Very importantly as well, when a red tide occurs, you can't wait to then apply for a permit. So we're working very closely under the leadership of the governor with our state agencies as well as the federal agencies to make sure that we get a priori approval for deployment of these mitigation strategies. We understand very clearly the importance and the urgency of this, and we are going to succeed in developing these technologies and deploying them not only here in Florida, but I'm telling you, we are getting requests and inquiries from all around the nation and all around the world. The Florida model for embracing science and technology to develop innovative tools to help protect our environment is a model the rest of the nation can follow, and they should follow. And I just want to close with thanking the governor for his leadership to make it all happen.
Just make sure if you get any of that that's really effective, patent it, because I want royalties to the state of Florida from all these other, I mean, we put in the research money. We need a benefit on the back end. And then also just to say, you know, we're doing all this because it's important, and we know these events can happen from time to time, and we just always want to be ahead of things as we can. But, you know, we're sitting here now not because this is happening right off the coast. In fact, this is beautiful right now here. I tell you, people are watching. You want a place to go. You know, these Pinellas beaches are fantastic. We're here in Clearwater Beach, but really you can't go wrong anywhere. And I know Dana Young was probably going to say that too, but we're really fortunate to have some really, really great places. And those of us who live here, and I grew up, and, you know, we're fortunate to be Floridians, but then you have a lot of people that they work hard, they save to be able to come to Florida to have fun and to bring their families. And so we welcome that, and we're really happy that we have beaches here. And particularly, I mean, I think in this stretch, some of the best beaches in the world are right here in our own backyard. Okay, I'm going to bring up Speaker of the House, who really has worked with me. You know, we launched these initiatives prior to him becoming Speaker, but I think if you look at what we've done since he became Speaker, the roadmap that we put out, not only do we fulfill it, but we did even more than many people thought were possible. And this is one area. There's other types of water infrastructure, water quality, you name it. We've worked very hard, and we had great legislative support, particularly from Speaker Sproul. So come on up.
Thank you, Governor. I appreciate that. I was going to talk to you all about nanoparticles, but since Dr. Crosby already covered it, I figure I'll skip that. As we stand here today, we stand here with the most pro-environmental governor in the history of Florida. You know, and the governor came here by the way, Governor, we like to think that the reason you're that way is because you were raised right here in Pinellas County. We're real happy about that. We know it's in your blood. You know, the governor came here today to talk about all the things that are happening in red tide, whether it's the unbelievable research that's going on at Mobe Marine under the leadership of Dr. Crosby, whether it's the modeling on red tide that's happening at the University of St. Petersburg. So much resources and efforts, so much more now than ever before on red tide. But the governor spent the better part of this week talking about the environment. He talked about the record resources we put into saving the manatee, the money that we put into resiliency across the state. When this governor came in, he could have picked any one of those things. He could have said, I'm going to be the governor who combats red tide the most. He could have been the one who says, I'm going to want to tackle the algae blooms in Lake Okeechobee. I'm going to one who's going to focus on the conversions from septic to sewer. I'm going to save the manatees. He could have done any one of those things, and it would have been a significant improvement in the lives of Floridians. But this governor knows that in order to make this the kind of place that we want to live, that we want to raise our children, we have to do all of those things, and we have to do them at the same time, Governor. I am so appreciative to be here with you. We stand, too, with legislators. I know I saw Senator Hooper, Representatives DeSantis, Cheney, and Latval, and Beltran, who are here. This has been the most aggressive legislature we've ever had on these issues. But we knew we had a governor that if we could just get him the budget, if we could just get him the bills, that he would lean into it and that we would make sure that we are most environmentally friendly, that we can enjoy this water and these beaches for many years to come. By the way, this governor and this legislature put more money into beach renourishment than has ever been done in the history of Florida, ever. My hope is that we're going to be here many years from now, 20 years from now, having a grouper sandwich right here at Frenchie's, looking out at this beautiful beach and that clean water free from red tide, and we'll remember that we had this legislature and the Governor Ron DeSantis to thank for it.
Thank
you. Okay, from the Department of Environmental Protection of the State of Florida, Sean Hamilton.
Thank you, Governor. It's a pleasure to be here today, another one of our beautiful, beautiful resources in the state. And as you can tell, the governor, and it's somewhat, at this point, an understatement, but the governor recognizes that Florida waters are essential to the state's way of life. And that's why less than 48 hours, I don't know what you do 48 hours into a job, but the governor, sworn in, issued a historic executive order outlining his bold vision to achieve more now for Florida's environment. Not 4 years from now, not 5 years from now. And so that leadership in itself is empowering us to move forward and make some of the changes that you're hearing about. So as we think about our options, both short and long term, you heard the governor talking about those items that are in development. But it's important that we accept those challenges as short and long-term solutions, including our support of the communities when they have fish kills and things of that nature. But more important, investing in long-term solutions that will abate and minimize the impacts and the longevity of those blooms. Last year, you all know too well the impacts of red tide on Tampa Bay. The department provided nearly $3 million, again, $3 million to Pinellas, Charlotte, Sarasota, and Manatee counties to ensure our beaches were clean, and additionally to ensure that the nutrients associated with the fish were not released back into the system, causing further harm. In total, the department worked with the counties to aid in the removal of more than 45,000 pounds of marine debris. And again, we look forward to a future where red tide events are less frequent and Dr. Cosby's out of a job. No offense, Dr. Cosby. But we know this will take time, right? We know this will take long-term water quality improvements and projects that you hear the governor talking about over the last week and the coming weeks. To that end, as a result of the commitment of this administration and the Florida legislature, statewide over the past 3 years, we've invested more than $500 million in coastal counties to address water quality and nutrient sources. And again, I always say, put your money where your policy is, right? And here you can see it firsthand. So thank you, Governor, for your commitment to improving our waters across the state and our way of life and the health of our economy and our communities. And with that continued support of the funding included in the 22-23 budget, I look forward to working with our partners to further these ongoing efforts. So thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, in a minute, bring up Dana Young, who does the Visit Florida. 2021, we set a domestic tourism record in the state of Florida. So you had a lot of places in 2021 that weren't even open necessarily around the country. And yet here we were, people knew they could come to Florida and they knew that they would be able to do what they wanted to do and not have, you know, all these arbitrary restrictions imposed on them. And so we had not only record domestic, we actually exceeded New York City for foreign tourism, which they've been number one for forever. I mean, obviously it's New York City, but you know, do you really want to go and have to show medical papers just to get a hamburger somewhere? I mean, you want to be able to go in. If you're going to go on a vacation, you want to be on a vacation. And so we were able to do that. And the result is, I mean, just think, if we had not done what we've done to keep all this open, and we would have lost tens of thousands of jobs, maybe many more in this industry. And so you look at places like out in California, the number of restaurants that have gone under, some of these other places. Here, these places like this are booming. I mean, they are doing really, really well. Most of the hotels, I'll always ask them, you know, because I give speeches in these events, in these ballrooms and stuff, and I'll ask the folks, how are you guys doing? Never been better, never been better. So we're excited about that. We want to keep that momentum going. Maybe Dana will have an update on 2022 and how that's going. I can tell you, just by seeing all the cars on the road, I think that there's a lot more people still coming to visit Florida, but we are proud of that. It's a key engine for our economy, and she's going to come up and tell you a little bit more about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. I never underestimate the governor's ability to remember every single statistic that I give him and then beat me to all of my own talking points. But the true thank you goes to Governor DeSantis for his bold leadership throughout the pandemic and keeping our state and our #1 industry, which is Florida's tourism industry, open and ready to welcome visitors. So thank you, Governor. So we are thriving, and that is due in no small part to the governor's understanding and commitment to Visit Florida's marketing of our state, both domestically and internationally, and the ability to be in market for almost 7 months, Governor, where not another state was doing anything outside their borders, helped us create an incredible strategic advantage for the state of Florida that you are seeing on this beautiful day. I mean, while I would come here for one of these great grouper sandwiches, most people here are here for the grouper sandwich and the gorgeous beaches. And the most essential element of Florida's tourism industry is our pristine environment. That's why people come. They want to see our beaches. They want to visit the Everglades. They want to have an opportunity to see some of our beautiful first magnitude springs and rivers and just experience the beauty that is this incredible state of Florida. So the governor's commitment to environmental resiliency and protection is really showing his commitment to our economic resiliency in our state of Florida. So funding that the governor is announcing today is truly significant. The governor mentioned earlier the fact that people don't understand Florida's geography as well as us natives do. And so if we had red tide in one area of the state, many people around the country and in other countries think that it's all over Florida. For example, in 2018, Visit Florida had to counteract $22 million in negative media that directly hammering Florida for red tide. And that is a huge hill to climb. So the more mitigation, the more study we do at Mobe to get a handle on this and stay on the offensive, the better we'll be. So thank you, Governor, for putting us in that offensive position, and thank you for all that you do for our great state.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So 2018, so I wasn't governor, but I was running, and so down in Southwest Florida, you'd go down there, and because there was parts where, you know, they did have different blooms, but even when it would die down and it was fine, you still had people out of the restaurants weren't open or weren't filled, the hotels, and a lot of that was because, you know, people were seeing this in the media and they thought that that was still going on. And so Visit Florida could help counteract that with some of our ability to advertise, and strategically, you know, we will look to do that. Also, I'd like to point out that we just got the receipts for the month of April in terms of the tax revenue coming into the state of Florida. You know, we have no income tax, lowest per capita tax burden in the country, and yet April, the revenues came in $765 million above estimate. And so, you know, So the fiscal year ending June 30th, the budget was $101.5 billion. To compare that to our nearest state in terms of population, New York, they have 3 million fewer people than we do. Their budget's over twice the size of the state of Florida. But yet I think that anyone would say we've got better roads, infrastructure, better services, definitely better services, higher performing K through 12 education, and our public university systems ranked #1 in the nation for the last 5 years by U.S. News and World Report. So we are meeting challenges. We see historic funding, not only for things like red tide and environment. We did the biggest increase in teacher compensation that we've had in this state in a long time. We did record funding for K through 12. Fully funded transportation budget, all these things. But even with all that, when the fiscal year ends June 30th, based on the amount of money that's come in over estimate, our total amount of surplus is going to be over $20 billion. That's a record. We've never had that big of surplus. And, it just shows you that managing well matters. And I bring that up just because part of the thing, we're obviously going to, we're actually going to announce some tax cuts on Friday. I'm going to sign that bill, or maybe next week. Well, pretty soon, we're going to sign the bill for that. A lot of tax relief for people was a $1.3 billion or something like that, highest ever we've ever done, and we're happy to do that. But we have so much cushion, and the thing is when you're leading, you have to look to see what kind of trouble could come on the horizon. And I think our fundamentals in Florida are very strong. However, you look at what's going on out of Washington, you look at the inflation that's absolutely out of control. They say it's 8.5%, but if you think the things that matter are up way more than that, gas, groceries, you look at how much utilities, all these things are going up really, really significantly. Now you have the Fed is going to be raising rates to try to get a handle on this. That's going to slow down the economy. I hope this isn't the case, but I think that there's a very good chance that the Biden administration plunges this country into a recession. And so we have to be prepared for that. I think we've got a lot of good stuff going. Hopefully we'll be able to weather it better than most. But from a budgetary perspective, if the economy slows down because of what they're doing in Washington, I just take some money, I plug in a hole. We will not miss a beat. We will not miss a beat. And so part of what you're doing, you want to be able to announce good stuff in the here and now, but you also want to have a fiscal situation where people know 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, this state is going to be in very, very good fiscal shape. And so we've been able to do that, and we're proud of that. I don't know, we have 2 more months in this fiscal year. I think we had $650 million over in March, or 630, 760 in April. Even if we have half of that much, that's going to be another $1 billion into the kitty that no one was even talking about. And part of that is tourism. Part of that is property sales. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But it's being done with very low tax rates. And it's a lesson that you will actually do better from a revenue perspective if you keep taxes low and expand your economic base. What a lot of these high tax states do, they keep taxing people and people leave. And so they're constricting their own economic base, and then they got to go to the well again and tax more. And it's basically a vicious cycle. That doesn't work. We're creating a virtuous cycle here in Florida where you have good conditions, low taxes, our economy expands, and it really reinforces one another. So we're happy about doing that, and we're happy to be able to hear today. On topic or off topic? Okay. We're doing the special session. So you had asked about that, and we're doing it. So we've got huge problems with how this market is done. And so I would love to see anti-fraud measures. We know if you look at the way Florida does, we represent the most recent numbers. We represent 8% of all property insurance claims nationwide. but we account for 78% of the litigation nationwide. And so all those costs are going into driving up rates. Actually, companies are failing as a result of that. And some of those companies made some mistakes for sure. But we need to have a situation where if some company jacks up your rates, you got 4 or 5 other options to choose from. And so they actually have to compete for your business. We do not have that now. So we're going to do the session to try to deal with that. There has absolutely been a lot of fraud. There's no question about it. And look, at the end of the day, the people that hurts are just our basic homeowners. It hurts a lot of elderly people. You know, the thing about Florida and the demand to live here is people's property values have gone up. The average Floridian, their number one asset is their home. And particularly with our elderly, where they don't have a mortgage anymore, you know, they've seen their homes go up significantly. But, you know, if you're getting hit with these bills, it makes it very difficult, particularly if you're on a fixed income. So what I've told our folks is, working with the legislature, you know, there's underlying issues as to why some of these things are happening. Some of it's going to go up just because of inflation generally. I don't think there's a single bill that is going down now because of what's happening. Even some of the electronics, that used to always go down because of technology. That's not going down the way it is. I think AT&T just increased for the first time in a while. So that there is a reality to that, and we just need to be honest that we're in the worst inflation in 40 years. But we have underlying problems with this system, and you need to address it. And so we're going head on. I want to take on as much as we can, and I want to get it done. Well, I think we obviously, the property insurance, the reason we called the special session is because it's reached a crisis point. We have a situation where companies are failing. There'll probably be more to fail if we don't stabilize the market. Now, we normally would not do that if it was just saying there was something we wanted to do, but we felt we had to do it. Just like we had to do the congressional districts. We had no choice. We had to do it. So we were able to come back and do that. I would just caution people, you know, you can leak stuff out of a court, which was really unprecedented, but let's see when you actually have something rendered, because, you know, how they negotiate these things, I don't think any of us really know when you get behind that. You know, they keep it all very secretive, and I think this was a huge breach of kind of their protocol and everything in terms of how they're doing it. And so I would imagine we'd probably get something into this month and into June, and we will take a look at it at that time. So. Okay, well, thanks, everybody. It's great to see you. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks for all your help.
I haven't. I don't want to be high maintenance. He did it a few years ago. We wanted to see him. He's going to sign it. It's his bill. They wrote it. I knew he wanted it. Yes, sir. Good to see you. You know what? I forget. I always forgive. I always forgive. Always forgive. Yep. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Nice to meet you. I'm feeling it.
Take care.
I'll tell you what.
I hate clearing out
After that, these are two. Who's right before? Isn't it 10? Yeah. 10 is right before the bridge, right? You guys are right Gandy?
About a dog track.
The Spectrum is out that way too, isn't it? But not quite
There's a
there.
lot of Spectrum buildings. I don't know what. Oh no,
Bader's 9 is sort of in that area.
They're like in Carolina.
Yeah, like, I know where Carolina is.
Roosevelt.
Yep. Right on.
Elbow.
You watch that? That's what you guys do.
Evan, I want to say goodbye. So yeah, so I got a decent picture. I don't know if you saw that.